Welcome to The Truth Is with Jael. It is July the 11th. I just finished the season finale of season 2, episode 8 of The Chosen. We've got some talking to do, and Dallas, you got some splaining to do, okay? I'm just kidding. Love you, Dallas Jenkins, as always. Wow. I was speechless for about an hour. I just kind of sat there and I was like, what just happened? Okay, so those of you who have not seen the episode need to turn this off right now. There will be major spoilers, so I have warned you. I've warned you verbally, and I've warned you in written form in the description of this video. If you have not seen this episode, turn this off and come back later, another day after you've seen it, okay? All right, I've warned you. Wow. Where do I start? Okay, I'll just do it chronologically. So we start with these two men negotiating a land sale. Someone from the tribe of Simeon and two men from the tribe of Reuben. You can tell that these two men who are trying to buy the land, that there may be something a little shady, a little sketchy going on. They're kind of playing good cop, bad cop with this other guy, and later on you will find out why. Their names are never mentioned. Then we see the disciples up early in the morning getting ready for the day. Of course, Simon the Zealot is doing his weightlifting, body lifting, I'm gonna look cute thing. They're telling him to put his shirt on before the women come out because he's hot. And, really for modesty back then. I'm just being silly. The disciples are talking about security for the upcoming event. Everybody's starting to have breakfast. The women are in the tents. Mother Mary is talking to Tamar, and the other Mary Magdalene, is teaching Rhema. And so they're having their moment with the scriptures. Now, it gets interesting for a minute between Rhema and Mary because Rhema keeps messing up while she's trying to read. And Mary Magdalene has basically memorized those verses, which shocks and amazes Rhema. She's like, how do you do that? She's like, well, I've had to memorize these. And Mary Magdalene is basically saying, I cannot be caught off guard again. She's basically saying the next time I have a meltdown, I backslide, I have a moment of weakness, I want to make sure that I'm armed and ready with the words of God, which is how we should be. So I thought that was really cool. Then we see those two men from the beginning, from the land sale in a tavern, and they're having a discussion. Now, we still don't hear names. The younger guy feels bad about what they've just done. So now we see that it really was something shady, something sketchy. Apparently, there is probably something valuable on that land under the ground that the other guy didn't know about. So they just made a really good deal because they're going to make more money off this land. And the younger guy feels bad about this, which shows that he has some morals, some ethics, that he's got a decent heart. Now, the thing that I found the most interesting, and I don't know if anybody caught this, I'm sure somebody did, was the older man called the younger man an orphan and a poet, to which the younger man got really angry and he said, I told you, don't call me that. And I'm assuming that he's referring to the orphan word. Now, let me just stop right there and try to unpack this. And I could be wrong, and Dallas Jenkins or somebody from your team could respond to me. I'd really love it. To me, it's showing that this younger man doesn't have parents anymore, obviously. He's alone. So this older man is mentoring him in the wrong way, I might add, because he's shady. And that this younger man probably has an orphan spirit. Now, if you don't know what that is, I encourage you to look it up. It would take too long for me to explain it. That's a whole sermon by itself. I can talk about the orphan spirit for at least 2 hours. But basically, you feel abandoned, rejected. You like to please other people, and you'll do whatever you have to do to please other people. There's just a whole lot to that. But that explains a whole lot about who we find out who this person is. at the end, but I'll come back to that. Just remember that. So right now he's an apprentice of this shady older man. Then we see the Pharisees go to see Rabbi, oh, I can't say these names, Shemi, I think, to make a case against Jesus. They all kind of start with the shma sound. These three guys are talking. They're trying to get their ducks in a row and figure out how to take Jesus down and get him in trouble and get him away from everybody because he's just, doing too much and people are upset. Well, the Pharisees are upset because he's doing things on the Sabbath and not according to the Torah and all that. Jesus in Matthew, as a continuation from the last episode, they are working on the Sermon on the Mount notes, which I love that Jesus is spending so much one-on-one time with Matthew because everybody else usually kind of ostracizes him. So it's nice that he's getting this one-on-one time with Jesus. The disciples earlier, though, when they first got up, they kind of referenced that and said, why is he spending so much time with Matthew? They were a little jealous, a little jelly. So they're working on the notes, and Jesus asked Matthew, well, what do you think of it? And Matthew was honest. He, said it was kind of rough. It was kind of hard to hear. And Jesus says, and I'm trying to start a revolution of how people see God, how people serve God, how people think. He's trying to get rid of religion, basically. So Matthew's confused about many of the things that Jesus wants to say. Jesus explains the salt of the earth metaphor. And Matthew suggests that Jesus flip a couple of things around, and Jesus is kind of like, we'll see. So then we go back to the tavern. We see those two men again from the sale of the land, and we see James, Thaddeus, and Nathaniel. They're trying to find a place, get permission to use a piece of land for Jesus to preach. And those two salesmen, the shady ones, they kind of talked the other guy into letting him do it. So they helped them secure a spot from a local merchant. Meanwhile, the disciples are passing out and posting notices about Jesus speaking in a certain location. And one of the notices is given to Quintus. Yeah, that was funny. And then we see the disciples starting to build a stage. Jesus needs to be elevated so that all these people can see him because they're expecting a really huge crowd, like thousands of people. And so Jesus needs to be physically elevated for him to be seen. So Jesus decides to start the sermon by thinking about each of the disciples. And y'all, this scene wrecked me. It goes through the Beatitudes, verse by verse. And, when he says, like, blessed are the poor in spirit, you see a flash of a certain disciple. Blessed are those who mourn. You see the flash of a different disciple. Oh, blessed are they who suffer or whatever. You see John the Baptist. And then he gets to Matthew. Blessed are those when people basically come up against you and persecute you and ostracize you and marginalize you. Now, that's not scripturally what the Bible says, but that's what it means. And he looks directly at Matthew and says that verse. Just have some Kleenex handy. That's all I'm going to say. Matthew was so touched by that. I'm sure everybody who watched that scene was touched by that because it applied directly to Matthew, And so we see the multitudes coming. We see Jesus rehearsing. The women all have these cloths and they're like, can we talk to you for a minute? And Jesus tells his mother, well, I'm kind of in the middle of getting ready for this sermon. What can be more important than that? And the women are like, you need a pop of color. They want to make over Jesus and help him to be more visibly seen to the people in the back. Otherwise, he was going to fade into and blend in with everything around him because he has on this kind of like tan beige outfit. So, and Jesus is like, I don't care how I look. But of course, the women are persistent. He eventually chooses a color with the help of Eden, Simon Peter's wife, who shows up, who we are happy to see. So of course, Simon Peter and Eden embrace. They're like, we'll talk later. We see the Roman soldiers, Gaius Atticus, watching. We see James' parents. We see Zebedee. Jesus and his mother discuss Joseph and how they wish that Joseph was still alive and there to see all that Jesus is doing and all he's becoming. His mother is being encouraging. She's saying, I'm so proud of you. I know that whatever you're going to say is beautiful. And, they both kind of say, it's time. It's time. And it just took me back to season 1, where his mother wanted him to turn the water into wine or make more wine. And he was like, it's not time yet. And she's like, we need some help right now. And he did that one little, tiny favor for her, that miracle. But now it really, really is time. Oh my gosh. But here's the spoiler. So when some friends and relatives come behind the scenes and just say hello, they take the younger of the two salesmen along with them. And they're like, come on, you can just follow us. You can meet, the disciples, and then we'll go sit down. Simon Peter introduces himself. And the younger man of the two gentlemen from the sale earlier is Judas. It's Judas. And so that is the big spoiler from this episode. Now, I love that Judas is a likable character. I like that he's physically attractive and unassuming in his character. He's not over the top. I suspected earlier that he was Judas. I think most people would have thought it was the older man who was sleazy. But I had a feeling that Judas would be someone who would blend in, who would not stand out. Because usually the enemy that's able to get to you and betray you the easiest is the most unassuming one. It can't be the one who's loud and obnoxious, or else you would have gotten rid of them a long time ago, sort of thing. Because, he's the type, Simon Peter's the type that would catch on to that and be like, no, this guy's got to go. So Judas has to be an enemy that's unassuming. And this is just a regular guy who at this point has some morals and ethics and scruples based on how he felt about the sale they did. He had remorse. He felt bad about it. So the disciples are lined up, kind of like the Soul Train line. And Jesus walks down the center slowly with authority. He goes up the steps. He goes beyond the curtain, and he just kind of stands there and smiles, and everyone starts to sit down. And the screen goes off, and it's like The Chosen. And we're like, are we going to hear about this? The Sermon on the Mount? Like, where's the Sermon on the Mount? Like, oh my gosh. And at first I was upset for about 20 minutes. And then I thought, those of us who have been in church for a long time, we know the Sermon on the Mount. We can read it again on our own. Maybe Dallas wanted us to go read it on our own. Maybe it'll be at the beginning of season 3, episode 1. I don't know. I don't know. I still don't know how I feel about not hearing the whole thing. However, there are some major popular verses from the Sermon on the Mount, those 3 chapters, that Jesus does reference, like being a city on the hill, being the salt of the earth, the Beatitudes. He does reference the more popular verses from that particular sermon. So we do get to hear his explanation for those things. And again, just the explanation of the Beatitude scene, how they framed that was just so beautiful. And how he equated it to being like a map, a roadmap for how people can find him. Because if you find these people, then you can find him. If you find all these different groups, then you're going to find him. And I thought, wow, how ingenious of the writers to put it in that way. And of course, we don't know if that's really what Jesus intended, if that's what he was thinking when he wrote those verses. But man, that scene was impactful. Just showing each of the disciples and how they correlated to each one of those verses. And again, the one with Matthew. Yeah. That's why I had to wait a couple hours to film this, because I just was not emotionally ready to talk. I was shook. I was a little messed up. I didn't watch the after interviews with anyone. I'll watch them later. But Dallas Jenkins, man, God has really anointed you and your team. Jonathan, there are no words. I don't even know how to describe how you make me feel every time I watch you in a scene, because your acting is so on point in the silent moments. How do you do that? Like, evoke all of these feelings in people who are watching you, and you haven't said one word. You know, it's bad enough when we hear your voice, which is angelic, heavenly, and still commanding, and still loving, even when you have to be firm, like Matthew was alluding to. I don't know how you figured out that voice, and I really don't understand how you act in those silent moments. But it is truly God anointed, is all I can say. This whole production, this show is beautiful. It's wonderful. And I'm so excited for what God is doing, how it's drawing people to Jesus, making people read their Bible. Man, souls are being saved. That's the most important thing. It's just wonderful. I can't say that enough. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. And y'all pray for Dallas Jenkins. And Dallas Jenkins, if anybody sees this and they can show this to you, sir, I'm praying for you, your whole crew, all of your actors, because you all need to rest. And I know we're like, when's the next episode? When's the next season? You know, I want to see it too. I'm excited. However, you must take a sabbatical. You must rest, sir. We need you alive and well. Okay? All right. I love you guys with the love of Jesus. And as always, the truth of God's word matters. Be blessed. Bye, y'all.